Hello everybody, it is Voodoo 51292 here, and welcome to an episode of Voodoo's Verdict, my honest and thorough game review series. And today we're going to be taking a look at a game that is quite old at this point, but I did just recently beat it because it was free for PlayStation Plus users on the PS3, and it was a game that I had played an extensive amount of back in 2012 when the game was new, but I never completed my single player playthrough of the game. So since it was free, I decided to hop on, download it, and whereas I played the first like 8 hours of the game single player when it was new, this time I did a full co-op online playthrough with my good friend Brandon, and played through the whole game and beat it. So we're going to be talking about Borderlands 2 today. And again, I know the game is old, so this is probably not really that helpful as a review. It may be for some of you, but more or less this is probably going to be more, I'm going to make it in a review style, but more or less this is probably going to be intended for those who just wanted to hear my thoughts, my opinions on Borderlands 2, because probably the game's so old at this point a review is not that helpful, although it may be for some who still have not played the game and are wondering about it. So, Borderlands 2, first things first, I am going to be, as I always am, honest in this review, and I don't want to get this reputation as somebody who just bashes really popular games just to get attention, because I'm not. I am completely honest with everything that I say, that I do in my reviews. I believe every word of it, and I don't do it for the kicks. Believe me, if I did it for pleasure, there's no way that I would have said like the things I said about The Last of Us in my review, because I took a lot of heat for that review. I knew I would, but it was my honest feelings on the game, and I said what I have to say. I'm going to do the same thing today with Borderlands 2. So first of all, I'm not saying this is a bad game. In fact, I think this is a really good game, to be quite honest with you. So let's just go ahead and talk about it and stop foreshadowing. So, Borderlands 2. Let's start off with, what the game is and the good things about Borderlands 2, which there are plenty of. All right. So, Borderlands 2, obviously a sequel to Borderlands 1. The game is centered around this idea that they promote very much of, and by they I mean, the developers of the game, Gearbox, of this concept of shoot and loot. It's a game where you're going to shoot. You're going to shoot a shit ton. You're going to shoot a shit ton of different guns. You're going to be shooting everything. You're going to be shooting a lot. So if you like shooting, Borderlands 2 should probably, pop up on your radar. And as the name implies, you will loot a lot. Probably more than you even would in like an RPG, like a Skyrim or a Fallout. Like, you'll probably loot more in this game than you did in those games. So there is a lot of shooting, and there's a lot of looting. And for the most part, that's your gameplay for Borderlands 2. Clearly, most people already know this about Borderlands. It's a very quirky IP. The graphics are very unique. I think they're very cool, actually. It's this very heavy cel-shaded art style. It's a quirky game. A lot of there's a particular humor that it has throughout the game, and you're either gonna like it or you're not gonna like it, and then it just becomes a matter of can you deal with it or whatever. It's got its own humor style for sure. I'm going to talk about what I think about the humor in Borderlands, especially Borderlands 2, but it's a quirky IP, alright? So, it's going to be different than pretty much what else you've played. And for most people like myself, that's a good way to start, because I like playing games that are different and unique. And it certainly is. So, similar to Borderlands 1, you are playing as a Vault Hunter in this sequel. 4 new Vault Hunters. You have, pretty much your typical stuff. You've got a siren. You had a siren in the first game. You have like a regular soldier like you did in the first game. And then a couple more different aspects. You have a character called Zero, who I guess can be comparable to like Mordecai. From the first game, he is a melee and long-range weapons expert. And you have this character called a Gunzerker, which is basically a tank. And you have, based on what character, you have a special ability that each character gets to use. And like most open world RPGs, you do quests, you get XP for doing said quests, and with the XP you level up, and you can use your skill points, your level points to unlock certain skills in your skill tree. So there's really nothing new here. It's pretty much just like your normal, open world first person shooter, or not first person shooter, but open world RPG style of game. And again, just like those games, you're going to have a main quest, and you're going to have a lot of side quests. Probably not talking Skyrim amount of side quests here. Well, technically you can, because Skyrim side quests are infinite, if you want to be technical about it, but you know what I mean. It's not on the level of how many different side quests there are on Skyrim, okay? But there are quite a few, and we're going to get into this later, but are the side quests really optional? Yes, but to beat the games, kind of no. So we're going to talk about it. But anyway, that is your main gameplay. Again, there's not much except shooting and you looting. You're going to be looting everything. I mean, chests, containers, items that enemies drop, just everything in the game. Loot, loot, loot. There's loot everywhere. So, it's a game that's geared toward people who honestly probably like to micromanage their inventory, because there's going to be a lot of looting. You're always going to be seeing new guns, new weapons that you're going to have to be comparing, testing out, trying out. Of course, you've got all kinds of different crazy looking weapons in the Borderlands way, ranging from all sorts of different weapon types, your pistols, shotguns, etc., with different color schemes, and you've got elemental weapons that, obviously fire, electricity, that kind of thing. Toxic, corrosive weapons, things like that. You're going to be looting and trying to find different shields that do different abilities. Maybe you have a shield that, when it gets depleted, you explode in this fireball and lights everything around you on fire. Or maybe enemies that get too close to you get corroded by your shield. Grenade mods that let your grenades do certain things. Special artifacts that you can get, which are character class specific, which can boost certain attributes of your character. So it's RPG, very RPG style in that sense, and there's a lot of inventory management and item collecting. And then the only really other aspect of the gameplay is the driving gameplay. The catch a ride stations are back. Catch a ride is areas in the world that you can spawn a vehicle, and basically the gameplay is just to drive the vehicle around, and helps you get to point A to point B faster, and you can kill enemies while you're in the car. It also handles about as well as the Mako handled for Mass Effect 1. So if any of you out there have played Mass Effect 1 and you've had literally woken up in the middle of the night with cold terror sweats because of the Mako, yeah, it's pretty much back in Borderlands 2. It controls just about as well. So that's really the gameplay elements of the game. The story, it's really not necessarily the best story ever written, okay? You have this new villain named Handsome Jack, and he is more or less interested in, opening a vault. One element about this game I did forget to mention is this element called Iridium. Apparently opening the vault in the first game triggered this element to begin growing all over Pandora. It's these purple crystals called Iridium, and really what they're good for is just the fact that at the home base of the game, the main town of the game, there's a black market dealer, and you can buy certain stuff from him with Iridium, and it's not even that great of stuff. It's like inventory slots, which in the beginning are really good stuff, but then by the end you're like, why do I even care about this Iridium, because I can barely do anything with it. So it's not as great as maybe you might think it is. Oh, black market for this rare element. It's not really that great. But anyway, yeah, so he's interested in opening another vault, and apparently, this vault unlocks the power to control this warrior, this Godzilla type warrior that will conquer all of Pandora, and whoever opens the vault gets to control it. And that's pretty much Jack's whole deal. That's what he's trying to do. And that's pretty much the story. Now, obviously, like I said, there's a ton of side quests in the game, so there's little minor storylines all throughout the game. You do meet interesting characters. Again, it's Borderlands, so everyone in the game is really quirky, and You're going to meet tons of interesting characters who have side quests for you that you can do or not do for XP, money, and sometimes a reward like a gun or something like that. And that's pretty much your gameplay and storyline of Borderlands 2. So on to my, thoughts of Borderlands 2. First of all, let's start with Handsome Jack, because I have seen, and this is very, again, this game came out, 2012. It's now 2014, so it's been out a while. And I have seen many of these lists where people count down some of the best villains that they've ever encountered in video games. And for some reason, Handsome Jack keeps appearing on a lot of these lists. Now, is Handsome Jack a good villain? Sure, he's a good villain. He fits into the Borderlands style perfectly. That's all I can really say. Fits right into the humor style. He's making jokes all the time, but he's very, very, very evil. He's very conniving, and even though he masks it with this, his humor is extremely dark. Even though he's cracking jokes all the time, he's really an evil to the core type of person who wants to do bad things. So he is a good villain. I don't necessarily see like top 10 villain ever. I don't see that about Handsome Jack, and I don't know, personal preference maybe or whatever the case. I just feel like, man, top 10 should just be these villains that are like, it's kind of like this universal thing. Where I guess nothing's universal, but like these characters that just jump off and just make these impressions on you that you're never going to forget. And to me, Handsome Jack didn't do that. Good villain, don't get me wrong, he fits into the story very well, and everything else. Didn't get that top 10 villain ever feel from Handsome Jack. For whatever reason, I just didn't. But that could fit into the more overall idea of the humor for me in Borderlands. Like I said, it is one style of humor. It's not really like, oh, we got something in there for everybody. We got like the witty humor versus like slapstick versus it's very just like, this is the humor and you will either like it or not like it. I will admit there are parts in this game that are funny. There are parts that made me chuckle, there are parts that made me laugh out loud. But I would say overall the humor doesn't really get to me. It really doesn't work that well on me. A lot of times I find it to be sort of on the immature side. And not, like, for example, Handsome Jack makes a joke about he has like a full diamond horse or whatever, and it's kind of funny, and then he's like, oh, I don't know what to name, maybe I'll name her Butt Stallion. And it's like, I'm 21 going on 22, like, Butt Stallion, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to put people down who are entertained by that type of humor. I really don't. I mean, if that's your type of humor, sweet, everybody has their own type of humor, but for me, I like maybe a more of a mature, and again, I don't want this to come off as, I don't want to say mature as in like, again, putting down people who like this as, oh, you're immature, but like, there's no way for me to, honestly, there's no way for me to put this, it's not going to sound insulting, just take my word on it that I'm not trying to insult you. I prefer a more, maybe subtle or more complex, kind of advanced humor form, okay? I like more wit, I like more, like tongue-in-cheek, kind of, the whole Butt Stallion thing, like, I guess you can categorize the humor of this as, of Borderlands as the Butt Stallion humor style. It's not like my thing, alright? And for some people it will be, for some people it won't be. It's either going to be, wow, this is funny, this adds to the game, or this is kind of a turn-off for me. For me, I like dealt with it, but it wasn't like I can't play this game because it's stupid. But it was kind of like, it's not really my thing. All right. But really, my main issues with this game boil down to, and basically what I'm trying to say is that Handsome Jack kind of fits, again, that humor. I mean, he makes the Butt Stallion joke. So maybe that's why for me he didn't stand out in my mind as like top 10, like Andrew Ryan type of, you know what I mean? So, but anyway, yeah, my main issues with this game, boil down to a couple things. First of all, the gameplay itself. This game, Brandon and I probably played this game for over like 20 hours or more, okay, at least. And we didn't do really that many side quests. In the beginning, we did do a lot. We did like all the side quests in the beginning. But as we kept going, we eventually had really, really good weapons. We were like, there's really no reason to continue to do these kind of monotonous side quests. Because for the most part, the side quests are fetch quests. Go get this. Go get this. Go get this many this, and that many that, and come back, and I'll give you a reward. And it was like, okay, at the end of it, it's enough. I can't do any more, fetch quests, monotonous side quests. I just can't. So we're just going to go beat the game. But we did play it for, like I said, 20 plus hours. The gameplay, in my opinion, gets extremely repetitive in this game because of how long the game is. The gameplay is literally shoot the fuck out of everything. Just shoot. And it's like, there's not much strategy involved. There's really not much. I mean, the only thing that breaks up the shooting is like using a character's special ability, alright? And literally by the end of this game, my finger was tired of pressing R1 to shoot. Like, it's all I did. I just sat there and just held the shoot button. And it gets to a point where it's like, I'm just tired of shooting the shit out of everything. You know what I mean? I need some kind of variety in gameplay, and you honestly just don't get it with this game, in my opinion. And again, while there are so many different unique guns or whatever, it just, regardless of the fact of what you're holding in your hands, you're still just shooting. And the game's idea of combat is, we are going to just throw the most amount of enemies you've ever seen in your entire life at you continuously. Wave after wave after wave after wave after another wave after some more waves of enemies. And it's like, it's suffocating to the point where you're just like, I can't sit here and just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, clear everything out, 10 more enemies spawn, shoot, shoot, shoot some more, 10 more enemies spawn. It's insane to a point. And it's like, by the end of the day, I was like, please let's just beat this, because I literally can't shoot anything else. I can't. Like, I can't shoot anything in video games for a long-ass time now because of this. So, the gameplay, it's pretty rudimentary and gets really old after a while. It's fun at first to use all the different types of weapons to kill these things, but it just gets too much, alright? And really the last point I want to make, and this almost, well, it did put a taint on the game for me. It lowered my score quite a bit. The final couple of story missions for this game, alright? Now, as I mentioned, we had done several side quests, as well as the story for the most part, until we just decided to go ahead and beat the game. The last, 4 levels or 4 or 5 levels of the game. And we were level 25 when we started the third to last level or something like that. And they recommend you, to be level 28. Now, first of all, I don't think it's right that the game more or less expects you to grind to get to a level where you should be able to comfortably beat the game. Reason being is that this isn't a JRPG. I can understand if you're playing a JRPG or something like that, a game where grinding is expected. There's certain types of game where you buy the game and you're like, I'm going to be grinding in this game. That's okay with me. That's why I bought the game. A game like Borderlands 2 or some of these other things, to me, the option should be, you don't have to do any side quests if you don't want. That's why they're side quests. They're optional content to continue the length of the game. If you don't want to play it, if you don't care, if you're tired of going find 4 trinkets and bring them back, if you're tired of doing that 20 times, you should be able to say, I'm done with the side content. I just want to play the game, okay, and just beat the game. I just want to go through the story and beat the game. You should be allowed to do that. In this game, not so much. because they recommended to be like level 28 to do these last few missions. We were like level 25. We said, whatever, we're done with the side quests. We don't want to do them anymore. And the game's not going to tell us that we can't finish the game. So we're like, we're going to go do it. It was like difficulty hard or tough, but it wasn't like the hardest difficult. It wasn't like impossible or anything. It was just like, you know, it's going to be harder than normal. Okay, fine. We play these last few levels, and they are spawning enemies literally 4 to 5 levels higher than we are. And the entire last 3 levels of the game consisted of us just dying fucking repeatedly. Like, we had gotten really good stuff. We were to the point where, like, you know, I was buying all kinds of different stuff. I had, like, over 2,500 shield capacity and over 2,000 something health, which, I don't know, for some of you that is like, oh, that's nothing. I did every side mission in this game and I had like 10,000 shield. Well, I didn't. For my level, I had really good stuff. And I was proud of it. I accumulated all this stuff. We go fight these enemies. I get shot one time. Complete shields are gone. And my health is down to like 2. Okay? And for the most part, we had been running through the campaign pretty easily. You know, like normal, challenging difficulty. You know, we were equally matched. In this, it was just like, it wasn't even fun. It was just, these enemies were so overleveled, they took no damage, and they would just kill us in one shot. And it was just repeated death, 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 respawn, run back, whittle their health down a bit more, die, come back, whittle their health down, die. And it's like, what was the point of the entire game? What was the point of leveling up? What was the point of getting all these really cool guns? What was the point of getting this really awesome shield, spending all that money? What was the point? Because it's completely worthless at this point in the game. It's completely underpowered. So why do we even bother? And it's like, it's just ridiculous. And then we get to the final boss, and I'm not going to ruin anything, but, you know, this isn't really a spoiler. The final boss is a ton of health, okay? So, literally, our guns did such little damage to this boss. I'm not even exaggerating with you. It took us, we didn't time it, but it took us at least, at the bare minimum, a half an hour to maybe even up to 45 minutes of all we did was sit there, hold shoot at the boss, and just plink away at its health. And that's what we did. And sometimes it would come in and kill us in one hit, and we respawn and go back down. 30 to 45 minutes of just sitting there, shooting and plinking the final boss and barely taking any damage until like 30 to 40 minutes later, we finally, you know, it was like stinging it with mosquitoes to death, okay? And we finally killed the final boss after like 30 to 45 minutes. So frustrated, so done with the game. We were so happy we beat it. We almost quit the game in the middle of the final boss fight because of how ridiculous it was. So, I'm sure I'm going to get criticized. Well, you should have just done the side content and, you know, got to a decent level to go beat the game, and then it wouldn't have been hard. But my point is that why would I be forced to do that? These types of games, I play all kinds of these types of games, and it's not that often that I have to do, I'm forced to do something in order to beat the final, to beat the game. You know, it's helpful, but it's not necessary. Like, you know, to have fun. Like, you know, Skyrim, Fallout, Oblivion, these games I keep mentioning, if I wanted to, I could just sit there and go through the main stories of these games and beat them and probably not have that much problem. A game like Borderlands, it forces you to do the side content. And again, if it's like a Japanese RPG and whatever where grinding is really part of their gameplay and you understand that going in, okay, it makes sense to me. But in a game like this, I shouldn't have to be forced to do optional content, because guess what? Then it's not optional. So I had a massive problem with it, and I had a problem with the fact that the last 3 levels of the game were completely ruined for me because I decided not to do any more monotonous side quests. That to me is BS, and I got really frustrated with the game. So, with all of this being said, what do I ultimately think of Borderlands 2? And I will be giving this score a rating because it was released as a $60 release. I think for the most part, Borderlands 2 is a fun game. I think it's enjoyable for the majority of the game. However, I personally found the humor offsetting. So, for you, that may not be an issue. You may love the humor. So for you, ignore this part. For me, I thought the humor was a little off-putting and overdone. Number two, you know, story-wise, it was okay. It didn't have a really amazing, gripping story, in my opinion. It was decent. It was alright. You know, and then the things I mentioned about like the repetitive gameplay and then the ending final 3 sequences being completely ruined because I didn't want to do side quests that the game was forcing me to do. Overall, though, I think the game is fun. It's a pretty good game, and you know, I think it's better than the first one. And I think that, you know, it's enjoyable. Now, the game is $40 to buy on PSN. It's free right now for PS Plus members. Again, I have to say this. If it's free, there's no harm in downloading it and trying it out because it's free. $40 is a hefty price tag to pay for a game that's 1.5 years old. So, like I said, just take into consideration what I said before you drop that kind of money. Do some research on your own. I have to speed this up because my camera's running out of time, but that's all I have to say. It's expensive for a game that's as old as it is. There's also 8 billion DLCs for this game that they're still making. So if you really love this game, you can play it pretty much forever because there's a ton of DLC for it. So what's my score? My score for Borderlands 2 is going to be underwhelming for some people, but it is what it is. I give Borderlands 2 a 7.75 out of 10. For me, a 7.75 is actually a pretty good game. It's pretty, you know, really fun for the most part, but a 7.75 means that there's things about this game that I don't like, things that tainted the experience for me, and that I wish had been different. And I'm probably going to get some backlash on this review if anyone even cares about it because the game's so old, because I didn't give the game like a 9, which most major media outlets did. My personal opinion. So, grain of salt, take it as you will. It's my opinion. I'm sure you have your own that I don't agree with, but it is what it is. So, take it for what it is. But thank you very much for watching. I'm Voodoo. Hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll be back in the future with more Voodoo verdicts. I appreciate it. I'm out, and I'll see you again real soon.